Today's scripture passage comes from Micah. And it's chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? God has told you, O mortal, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, and to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. This week is it's a wonderful, beautiful pause and interlude between sermon series. If you've been traveling with us through the summer, we just wrapped up the series on the Gospel according to Johnny Cash, and Matthew and Kevin did a wonderful job with that. And actually, one of the stories we didn't mention in the last service is the young people, we stopped by the Ryman Theater, which is the famous place where Johnny Cash kind of got his start in getting going in Nashville. And then next week, we're going to be starting a 3-week series that we're really excited about, as we're going to be talking to some scientists in our own communion congregation on faith and science and the relationship between faith and science as we move forward. And so that will start next week. But this week is a wonderful opportunity that we put in each year about this time to share a little bit. Traditionally, it's been about the missions during the summer. But starting last year, and it really was only the week beforehand, I thought it would be really good if we started including some time to hear about stories from Tall Oaks as well, the camp that so many of our children and our young people and then adults give their time to each summer, because it's one of the areas that you guys as a church support so faithfully, so wonderfully each and every year, and we don't ever really get to hear any stories from there. And so this year we're doing a bit of a new thing, a combination. You'll get to hear some stories about the wonderful things going on with Tall Oaks and hear from some of them. And then you also get to hear about the mission down to Chattanooga, Tennessee this year. And so that's kind of the frame and mindset today. If you're joining us as we get started, here's a wonderful video starting out at Tall Oaks.
Hello, my name is Shelby Thompson, and this year I went to Junior 2 camp, and every day we would learn a word. The words were aloha, shalom, agape, and si se puede. It was an awesome experience, and my two favorite parts were horseback riding, archery, and then we snuck over to the boys' cabin, and we sung Let It Go and How Far I'll Go. It was really a fun experience, and I hope everyone will be able to go through it.
Shelby did such a good job talking about junior camp, and that's one of the camps that I've yet to counsel, so thanks to her for that. Good morning. For those of you who don't know, I am Anna Godsey. I have grown up going to Lee Summit Christian Church, and still do. Hello. I also grew up going to Tall Oaks camps. The first camp I went to was Cairo, after a handful of girls in my baptism class convinced me that I had to go, and I'm really thankful for those girls. I continued to go to camp. My class was the first year that the Created to Be Me, or as most of us know it, Aiders Camp, was introduced in the Kansas City region. And then I was off to COIF, and then inducted into Kansas City Regional Youth Cabinet, and or as we just say, Cabinet. I know not everyone is familiar with what Cabinet does, so for those of you who do not know, it's a council that is juniors and seniors who attend camp, and they apply and go through an interview process to be selected as peer leaders at Midwinter and CYF. I loved being a part of cabinet, and the leadership skills I acquired gave me the confidence to be a leader in many other aspects of my life. I couldn't get enough of Tall Oaks, but at some point they won't let you be a camper anymore, something about graduating, I don't know. So the only way that I could go back to Tall Oaks was by counseling. So I did, again and again and again. This summer marked my counseling of more camps than I actually attended as a camper. That included 2 CYF camps for 2 summers as a cabinet member when I was in camp. I attended 9 camps total, and as of 3 weeks ago, I have counseled 11 at Tall Oaks. 6 of the 11 have been Aiders camps, 2 CYF, 2 Cairo, and 1 day camp. I've enjoyed how different each one is, but my favorite thing about returning year after year is the connections I get to make with the campers, because I counsel the same kids every year, and they come back. And it's what makes the experience as a camper much more than just a week at camp. And it's what made me. I've made friends with some of the counselors now, being a counselor myself, that counseled me. A few of them wrote me quite a few recommendation letters as well. Tall Oaks not only shaped my early years, but continues to shape me into the person I am today and the person I hope to be in the future. At the end of the day, Tall Oaks is just a campground. And that campground isn't who made me who I am, but it's the people. One of the CYF campers this year reminded us that as special as Tall Oaks was, it was only the place that housed the community of God that we had built. We love Tall Oaks and couldn't imagine our camp anywhere else because it's beautiful. But the campers come back every year, and I come back every year because the community and for the chance to feel so close to God. This summer, I was asked to counsel CYF and Aiders. So at the end of June, CYF began. One of my favorite memories while growing up as a camper was the square dance, and it's always been just as fun as a counselor as well. I get to help the girls braid their hair and put on their makeup. We play really loud music, and so their square dance dresses start twirling, and it's really fun. And it just reminds me of all the memories that I had with some of my really good friends at camp. Most of the counselors that volunteer have grown up at Tall Oaks camps, and so we decided for the last 2 years that we would make our own square at the square dance, which has been really fun because we get to talk and laugh and remember memories of our own square dances and feel a little bit like a camper again. So after CYF finished, Aiders began less than a week later, which I was excited about, but also in need of a lot of rest. So after 5 days of mostly sleeping, I was back at Tall Oaks. And if you've ever talked to me about camp, you probably know how much I love Aiders. Don't get me wrong, I love CYF, and I love all of the camps that are provided at Tall Oaks, but Aiders is where my heart lives. This camp is for teens who have just finished 8th grade, and it is about spirituality and sexuality. This environment with the kids that are all the same age and the topic of sexual intimacy allows for real, open, and honest conversations with each other. And one of my favorite nights at Aiders has always been the last night of worship. It's a very bittersweet time because each small group has become a small family over the week, and we feel so connected, but it's the last night, so it's sad. During the worship every year, the counselors wash the feet of each of our small group members, and some of the small group members get fairly emotional, as do the counselors. I'm a little guilty. This year, I got the opportunity to be a part of a fun and inquisitive small group. As the worship began, a few of them became tearful and sad because not only is camp ending, but they are returning to a world where 8th graders don't always have the chance to be authentically themselves. My group finished the foot washing and gave a few hugs, and then we sat very close in a circle on the ground, and we quietly reminisced our week. We giggled, and we had tears and smiles, and they brought comfort to each other. And it made the whole world feel like it would be okay, since this circle of young adults would be the future. I also love the little moments at CYF and Aiders. The girls who want to sit at my table in the dining hall so we could continue our conversations that we were having on the walk up to dinner. Or watching the sweet cabinet members in my cabin make every camper feel like they are a beloved child of God. The kindness the campers show to each other, even when their life has many differences. The biggest joy during small group, where we have gone from laughing and playing games to big, serious God talks, where each camper opens their hearts to each other. The constant singing the Aiders did while walking to lunch, or waiting for worship to begin, or in the pool, or at night before bed, or during FOB when they should have been resting, but they were singing. They thought that a little joyful noise might bring a little bit more brightness to the day. I also cherish the late night moments with my co-counselors at COAF. It was a dear friend of mine, Jenna, who grew up going to camp with me and getting to reconnect and talk about everything and anything. And a new friend I made in my Aiders co-counselor, Rachel, who was a Global Ministries mission co-worker from Canada. So she had a lot of interesting stories that I wanted to hear. I also enjoyed the moments with other counselors who I may not have known very well before counseling them week, but becoming friends by the end of the week because we understood one another a little bit more. These moments always add up and make every camp worth it. And you may ask why I would give up multiple weeks of my life for years when I could have been working or traveling or doing anything else. But as you can tell from all these stories and memories and joy that come from Tall Oaks, it's my thin place. Another counselor at camp at Tall Oaks said that this summer, that it had always been her thin place between her and God. It feels like he is walking beside you. Tall Oaks is a place where I feel as if the impossible is possible, and everyone is welcome and loved, no matter who they are. It's a place where I say when people ask where my favorite place is. It's where my faith has grown bigger and stronger, more than I ever thought it could as a camper and as an adult. And for the chance to give back and to allow others of all ages to feel the love of God the way that the same counselors, mentors, and friends did for me. That's why I go back. That's why I make it a priority. Because someone else did it for me when I needed it most. The community at Tall Oaks made me and continues to make me feel and know that I am a child of God. Thanks be to him.
Good morning. I'm Grant Hitchcock. If you don't know me, I usually attend the 9 o'clock service, so this is kind of weird to me. But I go to Lee Summit North, and we went to Chattanooga, Tennessee for our mission trip, and this was my first mission trip in my lifetime. And we had a different work site every day. We went to a food bank, a daycare, a homeless shelter, and there was this thing called Girls Inc., which was like a little place for girls to go if they needed somewhere to go, if their parents were working and at all those work sites we got the work done. We had fun. We saw God in all the work sites by helping the people who were maybe younger or weaker or just less fortunate than us. We also had fun on the mission trip. We went to Ruby Falls and then Nashville, and Ruby Falls was really crazy because it was like a giant waterfall in a cave, and Nashville was insane. The day we got to Chattanooga, I'm sorry, Seth, I keep harping about this, but we were turning into the church, and I'll just say one thing. Go look at the church bus, and you'll see Seth's lasting mark from the mission trip. But the whole youth group would like to give a big thanks to the congregation for allowing us to go on mission trips and allowing us to do great things like Worlds of Fun or a Royals game or just getting ice cream after youth group. Again, thank you for helping the youth for so long.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Godsey, if you don't know me, and no, I'm not the older brother of Anna. I'm her dad. I didn't promise any no dad jokes, so there's my one. If you know me, that's quite often. Mission trip the 9 o'clock service, I kept saying there were 8 of us. There were 7 of us that went on this mission trip. And include God, it was 8. So there you go. That's my mistake. I corrected it. The journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step, or in this case, some 1,600 miles. What I want to start by first is thanking the church for the support, for the dollars, for the prayers, and everything you do. The new van, it is so much appreciated. The van made this trip so much better. It was an easy drive. Barring a few small little minor incidents, it wasn't too bad. I asked our youth, what is a mission trip? And get several responses. If you've never been on a mission trip, if you've been on a mission trip before, raise your hand. It's not always about going to save all these heathen souls that don't know God. Because most of the time we go to places, they know God. They just need our help. So we go with a purpose to serve in some small capacity. Most of the time, not ever seeing the fruits of our labors come to a final end, but just doing a little piece so the next group of people can come along and fill the gap and finish or continue the work we started. And I can tell you with a surety, when Lee Summit Christian Church does something, they do it right. They finish the job. They leave a lasting mark, and they find it better than they found it. So you can be proud of your youth, that they work hard and they serve very well in the mission field, and your support is so much appreciated. So I'll talk about the travels a little bit. Our first step on the journey was on Sunday. We left here to go to St. Louis. We went to a play in St. Louis that evening and saw Footloose, the musical. And for some of you my age, it was a different twist. We remember the old Kevin Bacon Footloose. But there was a thematic message that we were going to share with the youth, and Seth will expand upon that a little bit more. So we got a good night's rest. We got in the van the next morning. I drove a little over halfway down to Paducah, Kentucky. We ate lunch, changed drivers. Seth got his first good inundation with the new van. And there are a few beauty marks on there, but nothing substantial. He's okay. So he drove. He got to drive to Nashville, and then from Nashville on into Paducah, into Chattanooga, Tennessee. And if you've never been that way down Highway 24 between Nashville and Chattanooga, there's a little hill called Mount Eagle, and it's just a few downgrades and curves and twists and turns, and the truckers know how to drive it. But if you've never been there and driving a van for the first time through there, there were some white knuckles. I just closed my eyes, and prayed a lot. No. Seth did a great job going through there. To top it all off, it was raining extremely. So his patience was tested when we left Nashville. He spent about 2 hours in traffic, and that's one of the things we talked about was the patience of setting in stop-start traffic for about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours before we ever left Nashville. God was testing Seth, and he passed. So he did all right. So we finally get to Chattanooga late that evening, and with minor incident, nothing that a few $1,000s won't fix on the van. It'll be all right. Nah, just kidding, Seth. It's small little minor scrapes on the tire. But we got there. We settled in, and I wish Dylan were here because we all had these air mattresses of various sizes. I had just a single air mattress, and Seth had like a little pad, maybe an inch thick, maybe. And then I think Grant had a small pad, and then Dylan had this king-size, massive blow-up bed with a headboard and, disco lights, music. It was the works, and none of my negotiations I was not able to trade him sleeping places, so I suffered in silence on my small little mat while he slept very well. But we did start the day off the next morning at a food bank, similar to Harvesters here in Kansas City, if you've ever been there. We prepared and moved food around in different locations to bins and then we filled boxes full of these foods to be meals to individual families out in the community there in Chattanooga and the surrounding counties. They serve some 25,000 meals a week in this capacity. They process over 1 million pounds of food a month through their food bank. And they say for every hour of donated time, that supports 92 meals. So by my calculations, in the hours we spent with 7 people was about 2,500 meals or so that we helped to provide in that day's time. So they did a significant amount of work. Your youth worked hard, and I was very proud of them. We did serve later that day at a daycare facility where we mulched and refurbished a playground. And once again, it was weeded. It was pretty run down, but the youth, we started with a huge pile of mulch, if you saw in the slideshow. And by the end of that, the mulch was gone, and it was significant change in the dynamics of that playground. We left it well enough where somebody else could come in and finish the job in short order. So once again, they served really well. We mowed grass. We moved a room full of boxes and for a Catholic charity. And what should have taken 4 hours took about an hour. And we were holding our hands up. Where's our next mission to? Our next trip. So we did. Some of the memories. We did go to a little, I'm going to call it a diner, that's a deli. It was called the Yellow Deli. And if anybody's ever been to Northern California in the 70s, there was a lot of tree houses, people with long hair, funky colored dresses. And the owners were obvious. One was an older gentleman with a long gray hair and a bun. His wife was wearing tie-dye. And they were the real deal, but it was like being in a diner in California back in the 70s with bell bottoms and all. So, not that I would know that, but so we went there, and that seemed to be the kids kind of stuck to that as a memory there that they liked. But I can tell you, they served well. They represented the church well. They worked hard. Our trip was very, very, very good because of the van. The trip back wasn't bad. It was a little less cumbersome. It didn't rain, so I got to drive back up through Mont Eagle without any problems. I left Seth to do the hard driving, and I did easy driving. So I'm thankful for that. But we had Dylan that went along with us. We had Grant. We had Isabella. And we had Delaney. And if you see Delaney, if you know Delaney, tell her I remembered her name. She'll know what you mean. So it's a little inside joke. But, folks, these youth are not our future. They are the church now, and your support is everything for them. And we are so grateful that we are allowed to go on behalf of the church into the mission field and to spend so many hours away from our families because of your support. It was a good trip. Seth is the person. He has your youth in good hands. He does a good job for us. So you need to thank him also for all his hard work and the things behind the scenes that you may not ever see. So once again, thanks.
So I've worked with 4 churches now, and about almost getting ready to celebrate 20 years in ministry, youth ministry specifically. And I can say this mission brought a first that I feel like is an appropriate way to kind of close out this time of sharing. I actually have one of the sites, traditionally when we finish up a work site, there's the thank you so much for your help, whatnot, and that's kind of it. We leave it at that. Sometimes we might talk to them later, sometimes not, depending on who it is. But I actually had one of the work sites email me a day later, just wanting to reemphasize how much they appreciated what we did and were impressed with our group. And I just want to share that with you this morning so you know how well your young people represent you here at Lee Summit. It says, "Good morning, Seth. I wanted to thank the volunteers again that came in to help us out Tuesday. Gina Crumbliss, who is the president of the food bank, stopped me in the hall that day to ask who your group was and just mentioned about what a great job you all were doing and also wanted me to pass along her appreciation. I also want to share with you that we say one volunteer hour helps us to provide 92 meals, so please pass that along, that information to your volunteers. Thank you all so much for the assistance, and I hope that your group had a positive experience in Chattanooga. The very best, Mark." And that was at the Chattanooga Area Food Bank. That, like I said, it's the first time I've ever, a couple days afterwards, had a work site reiterate their appreciation. As we close this and tie it all together, I just want to say thank you, church, for the ways that you are investing. That I hope you saw, I tried to coordinate and I wanted to get like so many different age levels here today to represent to you that your investment in the supporting kids going to Tall Oaks Camp, your investment in supporting Kids Go Missions has an impact not just for summer, but as you heard today, you heard from a little one who had a great time at camp. You heard from one who was maybe little. I'm not sure you started when you were little because I think you mentioned Cairo. Yeah, so she didn't start as a child, but because of her time at camp, now as an adult, she's giving up her time that she could be making money, doing so many other things to go and be at camp. And as we look at missions, there's a lot of things going on in our world. There's lots of headlines this weekend. And I get there's a lot of complication to it, and I'll be honest, I don't have the answers. I have a lot of questions. But I do believe this. I do believe perhaps one of the answers lies in our ability to build relationships, in our ability to take stereotypes and maybe break them down and search underneath and actually hear the stories of the individuals. And that's what missions and camps, that's what it's about. As Kevin mentioned, part of the reason I wanted to take him Footloose wasn't just to have a fun night. It's part of what we spent our conversations in the evening reflecting on during the week is what are the times the church gets it wrong? In Footloose, the pastor kind of gets it wrong after he loses his son and goes overboard and has this huge impact on the community. One of the times we reflect on Chattanooga is home to one of the U.S. Civil War's worst battles. And so we spent some time reflecting on scripture passages that have been used in parts of the church past to advocate for why slavery might be a good thing, might be God-willed. And what do we do with these scripture passages in Genesis and Paul's writings in the New Testament that seem to maybe suggest this? And how do we go about that, living faithfully now and today? I believe we do that by walking kindly with one another and to work towards justice together. And that's the story. And church, I just, again, want to say thank you for all your support because you guys make this happen for the families and the kids. And so thank you for your investment in these families and their futures.